Hey, can people see me yet? Let me know whether it's all happening or not. Okay, just waiting for that to go through because it takes a moment or two for my dulcet tones to reach your shell-like ears. Oh, shit. I haven't got a mute button on this one, so here's the microphone. It's my big Rode Procaster. And yeah, hopefully people are getting this. Can somebody let me know whether you're seeing and hearing me? There we go. Thanks, John. Yeah, so this is basically a kind of weird last minute live stream thing I'm doing because basically I can. I'm not going anywhere. Just give me one moment. I will be back in a sec. Okay, back again. Just put the headphones on. This is my Hiroshima Toyo Carp baseball cap. Yeah, so basically it's going to be about movies. It's going to be the usual stuff plus a little bit different. I don't have a moderator this time around. I'll let you know because middle-aged geek girl has gone to bed, but going to muddle on as best I can. So I've got a plan for January for personal movie watching. What I'm going to do all of the month of January is I'm not going to watch a movie I've seen before. You know, I'll look through my letterboxed. Get rid of the chewy. I will look through my letterboxed and saw that I kept watching movies I'd already seen. And so I kind of decided that I'm going to try a month of watching only movies I hadn't seen before. And I've seen a lot of movies, so it's a little more difficult than it might seem. So I'm going to spend January basically refreshing my palate when it comes to movie watching. And that's going to be kind of cool, and I'll enjoy that. But I did slip in before tonight my favorite, all-time favorite New Year's Eve movie. It's a movie that I used to watch with friends around New Year's Eve on VHS tape. I think Roadshow put it out on VHS, and there was never a great copy of it anywhere in Australia. So we'd have to watch this movie on VHS, and it is Alan Arkush's Get Crazy, the greatest New Year's Eve movie of history. Excuse me. I do have a mute button. Let me just try that again. You guys still there? Somebody write something. Yeah, so basically, I watched Get Crazy again, but it's the first time I've ever seen it in a clear copy because it is a movie I'd only ever seen on VHS, and just watching a real copy of it was astounding to me. For a long time, it was kind of semi-lost. They couldn't find the original negatives and the original prints of the movie. And so it was eventually found by Kino Lorber, who contacted Alan Arkush, who did a whole bunch of ancillary material for the Blu-ray release, which ended up being done by Zoom because of COVID. So all of the people involved and a lot of the cast and crew did a whole bunch of extras for this particular release via Zoom and via kind of FaceTime on iPhones and things like that. You got Malcolm McDowell in there. If you haven't seen Get Crazy, you really need to check it out. It's about a New Year's Eve in 1983, started in 1983, in the Saturn Theatre, which is like the Fillmore East or the Fillmore. It's been going for 15 years. A guy called Max Wolf, played by Alan Gorwitz, has been running it, and his assistant, played by Daniel Stern, comes in to take care of New Year's Eve for him. And all of these bands from the hippie era onwards to punk rock come to play the Saturn on New Year's Eve. It's just the best movie. I'm not doing it justice, but it's a fantastic film. And I really liked it. And it's got Malcolm McDowell playing a kind of Rod Stewart, Mick Jagger type character called Reggie Wanker, and he is fantastic in this. It's one of my favorite Malcolm McDowell roles. But yeah, Grant, you need to see Get Crazy. It's just such a fun film, and it's a film with a heart too. It's about passion. It's about the love of music. It's about so many things. By the way, I do have a glow stick on. Yeah, so I watched that. Now, I was going to watch another movie, but I didn't get time to do it. Other things, real life gets in the way sometimes. So this is the first movie I'm going to be watching in February. It's a kind of vulgar pleasure of mine. And it is Hullabaloo in 3D, starring Fernando Lamas, Rhonda Fleming, and Brian Keith. It's also got Rita Moreno in a really early role in it. And it was filmed to be done in 3D, and it's got an anamorphic 3D one, so I can put on the 3D glasses if I want to watch it. But it's got all these things where, like, you've got natives throwing spears at the camera, so that it's supposed to be in 3D. It's one of those jungle adventures that they did a lot in the 1950s, but I kind of got a soft spot for it. So that's going to be my after January film to watch and to enjoy, because I kind of like this type of low rent, low risk adventure movies. And I really love this one in particular for no particular reason, apart from the fact that Brian Keith is such a fantastic actor. Yeah, I think you might well have seen Get Crazy at some stage, John, because it was going around a lot back in the day when you and I were hanging out. So what's anybody else been watching? I know that, Grant, you've been watching Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which is one of those weird movies from the 1960s where they did children's movies, but they made them so long that kids couldn't sit through them. They did it with Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. They did it with Dr. Dolittle with Rex Harrison. And there's a book about the Academy Award nominees from the year that Dr. Dolittle came out. And Dr. Dolittle had the worst production. Rex Harrison was drunk half of the time and totally up himself. He was married to Rachel Roberts, the actress at the time, and she was constantly drunk. And when she got drunk, she did these weird things like getting really sleazy with people and crawling around on the floor of parties and barking like a dog. So it's a real weird kind of film, but it's one that I really enjoy. I've got a copy of Dr. Dolittle, and I sat through it, and I like it mostly for the songs that Anthony Newley and Leslie Bricusse wrote for the movie. And it's one of those really weird, vulgar pleasures. So let's see, how many people have we got on the stream? I can't tell looking at this at the moment. 10. So we've got 10 people. Great. That's a quorum, I think. Yeah, it's a minion. Yeah. So basically, that's one of the things I've been doing is kind of getting this deep interest in kids' movies of the 1960s. I may well do a video about them at some stage, I think, and just kind of go with it, because I think it's time to revisit that. By the way, if people are interested here in Australia, Puffin Stuff has got a Blu-ray release as well. The HR Puffin Stuff movie, which I love. I've got an earlier copy of it, so I won't be picking that one up. But I've got such a love for it. It's got Mama Cass in it. It's got Martha Ray. It's just totally off the wall crazy. Hey, Christopher, thank you very much, and welcome to the live chat. By the way, I've got a few things on the soundboard. I've got 2 more sounds I put on the soundboard for this particular live stream, and I picked them up from an Academy Award-winning film. So here's the first of the sound things. I've got the one from The Naked Jungle, which I've left on there from last time. Marabunta. Which, of course, is William Conrad. By the way, The Naked Jungle got a Blu-ray release here in Australia as well. And even though I've got the DVD copy of it, I have ordered the Blu-ray one because I just want to get the best copy of that movie. Again, like Hullabaloo, it's a jungle adventure film. And just so much fun with Charlton Heston and Eleanor Parker and William Conrad in it. Emma says, Witchy Poo always creeped me out. Yeah, Witchy Poo did. But then there's Witch Hazel, played by Mama Cass, who was just over the top wonderful. And you've got Boss Witch, played by Martha Rain. She knows what kind of movie it is because she was in Hell's a Poppin' back in the day. By the way, one of the influences for Get Crazy, and that was wonderful, me holding it upside down. One of the influences that Alan Arkush said for Get Crazy was Hell's a Poppin', the Olsen and Johnson movie with Martha Raye in it. So everything comes around. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting that. The other thing I've got on order besides The Naked Jungle is Kitten with a Whip, which is an early Anne Margaret movie where she basically hassles John Forsyth, which is kind of interesting too, because apparently John Forsyth was a pedophile. But I'm looking forward to getting that one too. It's a black and white kind of drama from the early 60s with Anne Margaret playing a very naughty girl. So really looking forward to that one as well, because I've got a thing for Anne Margaret. I really like Bye Bye Birdie. I really liked Viva Las Vegas. She was much better than Elvis was in that. By the way, can people see my Vincent Price Funko Pop up there? It's one I only picked up this week, and I'm so happy to get it. So Christopher says, Witchy Poo haunted my nightmares for many years. If you look at my in memoriam, Billy Hayes, who played Witchy Poo, died in 2021, which is kind of interesting. She lived to be in her 90s. And if you've ever seen Little Abner, the movie of the musical, which has got Stubby K in it, and Leslie Parrish was beautiful. Billy Hayes, who played Witchy Poo, also played Mama Yoakum, Little Abner's mother, in the musical of Little Abner. So that was kind of cool. And I'm going to take another sip of drink because I can. Yeah, Billy Hayes was short, but I think she may not have been the kind of person who liked guys, if you know what I mean.
Marabunta.
That's weird because that went off by itself. Maybe something bumped against it. The other, by the way, I've gone off track. The other things I've got on the soundboard are Betty Davis.
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
And of course, the inimitable George Sanders.
Miss Caswell is an actress, a graduate of the Copacabana School of Dramatic Art.
And of course, in that he's talking about Marilyn Monroe. But yeah, so things have been kind of quiet here. For those of you overseas, Australia has the fastest escalating COVID outbreak in the world at the moment. Things are going nuts here. And so everybody is locking down and not going out. Some people I know are going out for New Year's Eve, but a lot of people are quite concerned about it because it's, the chart's going like that at the moment here, because kind of conservative governments have really dropped the ball. I'm not going to go into the politics of it. I'm not going to make this about politics. But if things from your Australian friends online are a bit weird over the next few weeks, we're really kind of getting used to the fact that our systems have let us down as far as this pandemic is concerned. So let me know if you want me to start showing you my soundtrack vinyl, because I've got a whole bunch of the vinyl that I've got with soundtracks. And I had more than I thought, because the records are all up there and they're in shelves. And they're in no particular order because I've never got them alphabeticized or anything like that. And all the ones that were movie related. Hi, Ellie, how you doing? Stay warm there. And, you guys have as mad a political leader as we do. So sympathy from across the world. So, okay, FG says, love to see it. Okay, I'm going to start out with a movie that made no money and was totally over the top. And I've got the soundtrack album for it, and the cover of it is in really shit condition. I've actually got the soundtrack for Michael Todd's Around the World in 80 Days. Oh, hi, Hal. How you doing? Yeah, so this is the first one. I've got the vinyl of that. I haven't played it for a very long time. Haven't played a lot of my vinyl for a very long time, but there it is there. It's got all the liner notes on the back, and I love liner notes. That's why I don't particularly like streaming audio, because you don't get liner notes with streaming audio. But yeah, Around the World in 80 Days. I don't know whether it's rare or not, but it's in crap condition. I think the disc itself is in pretty good nick. But I really should watch that movie again. I haven't watched it in like decades. I'm sure it's out and about somewhere, but I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. So that's the first one. And it's kind of one of the lesser ones too, because we've got better ones than this. Let's have a look. This movie I've never seen. Let me know whether I should see it, but I've got the soundtrack album. The cast is great. Historical drama, the way they did them in the 1960s. It is Beckett, the soundtrack to Beckett, with Peter O'Toole and Richard Burton, who was my mother's second cousin, by the way. Yeah, so let's see. Peter O'Toole, Richard Burton. Let's have a look here. Music by Lawrence Rosenthal, conducted by Neil Matheson. Yeah, I don't think that's one I'm going to be playing at parties very much, but it's kind of interesting that I've got it. I'm fairly sure this is one of the discs that was given to me by my recently deceased great friend, Ivor Cole, who got me into doing my radio gig for ABC Radio. And he had a whole bunch of movie-related stuff that he threw my way and just kept sending me more and more of it as he was getting rid of it because he knew that I appreciated it. And so I ended up with weird things like old movie tickets for Cinerama movies and things like that. Grant says, yes, Beckett is worth watching. Thank you for that. I wasn't sure. I'm going to have to find a copy of it. But I haven't seen A Man for All Seasons either, so I really should do that. And I can do it in January if I want to, because the rules for January for me is that I'm only allowed to watch movies I haven't seen before. So I'm kind of looking forward to that adventure, even though I'm going to find it a little difficult because there's always that tendency, if you're just having a crap day, to kick back with a comfort movie. And if I'm only watching movies that I haven't seen before, there's no comfort movies. It's all about exploration. And I've put a whole bunch of movies that I haven't seen that I've got on disc into the Crate of Shame in the lounge room, so I can just grab them out of the Crate of Shame and watch them. And then I'll review any ones that I like. So that's going to be a kind of weird adventure. Not sure how it's going to pan out, but I'm sure I'll learn a lot more about cinema than I did, because the Crate of Shame's got a whole bunch of movies that are really good and the people have recommended to me and that I've picked up over time, but I just haven't got around to watching yet. So really looking forward to that. So the next one, I picked this one up for $2 because it says so on there. It's an adaptation of soundtrack. So it's not the original, because the original there isn't any good source material of. But it's by the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. And it's one of my great all-time favorite adventure films. So it's Miklos Roche's composition, like soundtrack for The Thief of Baghdad, which is one of the great adventure films of all time. It doesn't get a lot of love now because it's got no CG in it. And it's just a wonderful piece of cinema. I know it's on Tubi.tv. I'm fairly sure it may be on one of the other streaming services. I know it's been on SBS On Demand here in Australia. But it's just a fantastic movie. And I like the music enough that I picked those. I mean, it's in perfect condition, the vinyl. It was actually unused. I picked it up only like 5 or 6 years ago for $2 in a Blu-ray shop. So I'm really looking forward to revisiting that one again, because it's just one of my all-time favorite adventure films. And I'm really pleased that I've got the soundtrack to it. People want to see some more soundtracks, or we want to talk about anything else, bring up a subject if you want to talk about anything. And I'd be very happy to kind of shoot the shit about it. Anybody got any ideas whether you want to see some more vinyl, or whether you want me to talk about something else? Yeah, Christopher, Sabu's just so charming in that movie. Hal says, I met Melma Bernstein in LA back in 1998. I was in LA in 1998, come to think of it. I was in LA and area around the 4th of July. Do you want to hear the cab story from LA? Because I've got a really weird taxi story from Los Angeles when I was there. I was only there for a few days, but I kind of packed a lot in, and then I headed elsewhere. And kind of traveled across America, did various things, and then came back again. And my girlfriend broke up with me, which is kind of interesting. Nonetheless, it's a lot of fun. Okay, so here's the cab story. I was staying near the airport in Los Angeles, in Inglewood, and nobody told me that it was a rough area. So I've got this Motel 6 room in Inglewood, and I've got 24 hours before I'm meeting people who are going to pick me up and show me around. So I'm jet lagged as hell. It's, the sun's starting to set. So I took a cab up to Sunset Boulevard and looked around there. I saw the Viper Room. I saw the Tower Records. They did all that kind of stuff. And then I started walking. I went for a walk because nobody walks in Los Angeles except me. I found the gay area of Los Angeles, and there were some charming people there. Had a really good time then. I started to, when you get jet lagged and suddenly you hit the wall and you need to go home, you need to go back to your digs and crash. So I did that, and this is before mobile phones were a thing. And so I called up, I found a phone booth and called up a cab company and told them I was on the corner of Sunset and Euclid or something like that. And I waited, and 20 minutes later, a cab threw a U-turn in front of me, and a chihuahua's head stuck out of the window. No kidding, a chihuahua. And so I think, oh, all right. And I kind of leaned down, and there's a hippie cab driver who is there. He goes, oh, you must be Terry. Get in. I'll take you back to the motel. So, yeah, we do that. And so we start talking. And this guy's got these weird ideas about Los Angeles. He said that there was half as much oxygen in the atmosphere in Los Angeles than there was anywhere else in the world. And that's why people in Los Angeles are mad. Scientific bullshit, but this guy was just so into it and talking about why people were crazy in Los Angeles. And he was pretty much a demonstration of that himself. So with this long rambling philosophical chat for like 35 minutes while we're driving back to the motel, and I'm about $5 short on the fare. I don't have enough cash. I had card, but he wasn't taking card and things like that. So I gave him all my cash. And he said, don't worry about it. That's all right. You let me vent. I got everything out of my system. I totally cleaned out my pipes. It's okay. And you have a lovely day. So I had this weird hippie cab driver ride. And that was one of the times when I thought, okay, you just got to lean into any craziness that happens to you when you're traveling. You just got to go with it. You just got to stay smooth. You just got to go, okay, things are going to get weird, but it's okay that they get weird. And one of the great things about travel is the weirdness tends to be more unpredictable. And so it's one of the reasons why I love traveling. And it's just such a wonderful experience to meet this guy and his chihuahua, because he's got like a chihuahua co-pilot who sits in between us and gives me dirty looks every now and then while we're doing this enormous drive back to the Motel 6 in Inglewood. And it's one of the great memories I have of being in the United States, some of which I probably can't discuss. But yeah, it's a wild place, and I'm not surprised that Elmer Bernstein was hanging out there, because there's only half as much oxygen in Los Angeles as there is anywhere else in the world. So anybody else self-medicating? I haven't actually had any alcohol tonight because I've got to do this. But I was thinking of having maybe a Frangelico afterwards, because alcohol and live streams don't tend to go together very well. Everybody still there? Everybody happy? You want some more vinyl? Lots, says Christopher. Oh, wonderful. I've got this weird thing too. It's called a confetti gun. I picked up some stuff I like. I picked up the glow sticks and things like that. Colin, yes, your question, please. I'm more than happy to answer it. Yeah. What's the most boring movie you ever saw? Have I seen Triple Bogey or In the Soup, 5-Part Hole or In the Soup? Most boring movie. That's a tough one. Let's see. What have we got for a boring movie? I try not to be bored with movies. If I'm at home, I'll kind of take them off if they're not kind of grabbing me after about 20 minutes. And I didn't used to do that, but now I do. I just go, okay, this one really doesn't kind of have a hook to engage me with it. And so I just tend to stop watching them. Let's see, boring movie. I did watch the Star Wars prequels. Now, I get in trouble from a lot of people, including Sally, when I start dissing Star Wars, but I find them kind of predictable and ordinary, and I can never buy into that binary morality thing of good versus evil. And so the Star Wars prequels just bored the shit out of me, even though they're all special effects and boom boom and pew pew. Really didn't work for me. Grant says a drink tonight, I guess. It's a little early in the morning to self-medicate. Says, Hal, looking forward to it tonight. Yeah, I forgot about time zones. Oh, yeah, everybody will be self-medicating. The whole planet will be, in a sense. So we'll see how that goes. The fireworks are on in Sydney Harbour tonight too, which I did go to a few times when I was living in Sydney. But we kind of got over fireworks because in 1988, they had the bicentennial of the founding of Australia by white people, basically when white people stole the country. And Sydney had fireworks every 7 or 8 days during that whole year of masturbatory celebration. And so I got sick of fireworks after a time. And I was living in Glebe, which is fairly close to the harbour. And we were kind of going, oh, more bloody fireworks. And it got to like that for a while. But let's see, it's 12:25 p.m. here in Scotland, says Colin. Yeah, that's past the sun's past the yard arm. If you get any sunshine this time of year, is the sun risen yet by that time of day? But yeah. So anyway, back on what I was saying, I picked up a few things. Like I got a glow stick because I thought that might look cute on the channel and things like that. I also got this thing called a confetti shooter, which shoots confetti out of little cartridges there. And one of the things I didn't know about confetti guns is if you fire them within a quarter of a mile of a human being, their ears ring for a half an hour afterwards, as a little kind of ejaculation of confetti comes out of them. This cost me $4, but it's noisy as hell, and it shoots tinsel out of it. It doesn't actually shoot confetti; it shoots tinsel out of it, and it deafened me in one ear for about 20 minutes after I let it off. RSFX, if one really loves movies, especially as a buff, it's often hard to get bored while watching. There's always something to observe, consider, think over, notice, even if it's in a negative way. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of learning from bad movies as well. You can learn more about cinema sometimes from a bad movie than you can from a good one, absolutely. But I think that one of the reasons I don't much like Steven Spielberg stuff in a lot of cases is I love a movie seducing me, taking me out to dinner and telling me I look nice and doing the whole thing and drawing me into its world. But I found with a lot of Steven Spielberg movies like Close Encounters and E.T., it's too obviously pulling the emotional strings. It yanks them hard and it yanks them in an obvious way. So those kind of movies really don't do it for me because I don't like being blatantly manipulated by a movie, and that's one of the problems I have with Spielberg. Yeah, Japan and Australia are mostly in the same time zone. Japan usually has the same time zone as the Northern Territory in South Australia, which is one time zone over from us. So when we went to Japan, in 2019, there was no jet lag at all. It's just like going to sleep at night and you wake up in the morning and you're in another country. Let's see. Grant says the only time I fell asleep in the cinema was watching Prizzi's Honor. I didn't mind that. I thought the acting was good. I don't know that it had enough story to carry a film particularly well, but Prizzi's Honor wasn't too bad. Have I ever fallen asleep in a cinema? No, I tend, because of my complex PTSD, which I've had since childhood, I tend to be hyper vigilant when I'm in public spaces. So I don't tend to fall asleep in public at all because of that. So falling asleep in a cinema is kind of not something I can particularly do. But I can understand a movie being dull enough that you can. And cinema seats aren't really conducive to sleeping, are they? Though, if you go to gold class cinemas here in Australia, the seats do recline nicely and they're nicely padded and they're really comfortable, and people come and bring you food and drink when you ask them to. And I can see you falling asleep at a gold class cinema, but I can't really see it in a normal cinema as a rule. All this talking always makes me cough for some reason. Anybody want to see my next piece of vinyl? And I will wait for that to percolate through the system. And this is fascinating stuff for you guys. Let me see, what else have I got here to show you or tell you about. This way. Yep. Next piece of vinyl I picked up in Perth about 5 or 6 years ago. It's actually a re-release of a classically bad movie, but I really like the vinyl of this, and I played the soundtrack a lot. It's got the Sandpipers and the Strawberry Alarm Clock, and it is Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, the movie that was actually written by Roger Ebert, the movie critic. And I kind of like this style of music. I like Strawberry Alarm Clock doing. Let's see, what do they do? They do Girl from the City, Sweet Talking Candyman. Let's see, I'm Coming Home. It's got the Sandpipers doing the theme from it. It's got a picture of Russ Meyer on the back, which is never a bad thing. And I picked this up from a bookshop that was being run by a good friend of mine, Robin Penn. And so I went in there, bought a few books, and found this and bought this because you've got to have a Russ Meyer soundtrack in your collection. No two ways about it. I always liked Hot Pants. That was weird. Growing up when I did in the 70s, and I was in a working class suburb, we had female teachers wearing hot pants and macrame tops, and they wore bikinis to swimming carnivals at school. And it was really useful because you could kind of determine your sexuality pretty quickly growing up in schools with teachers wearing miniskirts and hot pants. And I'm comfortable with my sexuality. And I really have to thank those female teachers for that. Next piece of vinyl, let's see. Hi, Terry. Carrie Nation rock. Dolly Reed was the lead singer. She married Dick Martin from Rowan and Martin. Cool. Do I recall the hexagonal vinyl releases of the Andromeda Strain soundtrack back in the early 70s? No, I don't. Let's see. I'm going to get rid of this spam. Put that one. Cool, get rid of that. And do it again with this one. Because I don't have a moderator, I've got to do this stuff myself. So excuse me for a moment while I get rid of those. Oh, we're getting more of these. Okay, let's see. I'll remove them as well. These people are fucking menace. Oops, I shouldn't say that, but so they are. Okay, let's have a look here. So yeah, next vinyl. We'll do the next vinyl while I ignore those spam things. Okay. This one I like because it's a soundtrack from a guy who didn't make many movies. It's the original score from, this was owned by somebody. It's a secondhand vinyl. Somebody in Western Australia, somebody called Richard J. Bridge, owned this movie and bought it in 1970 for $5.95. He even got his phone number here and his address. It's kind of interesting. I must have picked up in WA. Alice's Restaurant, the Arlo Guthrie soundtrack to Alice's Restaurant, which is kind of cool. And there, if you have a look there, you can see the guy's name and address and when he bought the disc. So I like these little added. It's like when you buy a book and you find stuff that people left inside the book, like bus tickets and other things like that. It used to be great buying secondhand stuff for that. Christopher, did I ever want to make my own movie? Not particularly, because kind of, I mean, I wanted to write fiction, but I was never dedicated and disciplined enough to do it. But as for making a movie, the collaborative part of making a movie was always overwhelming to me. So I'd much rather talk about what other people do than do it myself. Yeah, Barry. Yeah, so no, people keep saying that to me, and I kind of think about it now, and I go, would I like to make a movie? No, because I couldn't make any money out of it. Yeah, Strawberry Alarm Clock did do Incense and Peppermints, and I like Incense and Peppermints. I think it's great. It's like Inagata Vita. It's just one of those classic hippie tracks. Ali says, "Did Strawberry Alarm Clock? You could remake any movie. What would you like, and who would you like to see make it?" Let's see, what remakes would I like? Ooh, oops, and I've hit the mic boom arm, and I was hoping that I wouldn't do that. Oh, that's such a good question. What movie would I like to have remade? It's a tough one. I want to see somebody properly do. I know they're doing this. They're reconstructing the Magnificent Ambersons from the material that Orson Welles left, and they're also doing computer-generated animatics to fill out the bits that were cut by people like Robert Wise while Orson Welles was in South America at the time. So I'd like to see a full version of that. Same way, for years I wanted to see The Other Side of the Wind, and it finally came out. Remakes I kind of don't want to see as much as I want to see new stories. I want to see what's coming out of other places. I want to see more Hollywood movies. I want to see marginalised people. I want to see a lot more Indigenous cinema here in Australia. And we're starting to get it now. 2022, there's going to be a lot of movies made by Indigenous filmmakers here in Australia. I'd rather see those than remakes. Let me see. Mike Rooney, I just picked up Gargoyles of Cornell Wilde for 50p. That's a good buy. It is also on Tubi.tv, but Gargoyles is interesting too because it's got Bernie Casey playing one of the gargoyles, and the very concept of it's kind of interesting as well. Barry Murphy, I saw a great Indian movie over the Christmas period. It's a time movie called Marnad from 2021. Check it out if you haven't seen it. I'm going to go through the live stream. I'm going to pick out all these movies. Best movie I've seen this year, Grant. Probably The Power of the Dog, Jane Campion's movie with Benedict Cumberbatch and Cody Smith-McPhee and Kirsten Dunst in it. I just like that movie because it feels so unmovie. It feels like you're watching people in that time period. And it's a kind of slow burn, really interesting film with a lot of tension in it and a satisfying but somewhat unexpected ending. I really enjoyed that. I also kind of enjoyed, which I haven't talked about on the channel before. I did like Don't Look Up. A lot of people didn't like Don't Look Up. It's really a kind of polarizing film. Some people liked it. Some people didn't like it. I like the cast. The cast is fantastic in it. Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence and Meryl Streep and all of those guys really do nail it. And it's got a really nice little coda at the end. There are two kind of mid and post credit sequences almost, which it's a great satire of the last 5 years of world politics and world society in a sense. And I think it's one of those movies that's going to be appreciated more in the future than it is now. Colin, going to watch Don't Look Up it later. Yeah, enjoy. Just sit back and I don't think it's a perfect film. I think there are moments when the satire is either ladled on too heavily or they cut away from it too quickly. But for the most part, I really like it, and I like the ensemble works really well. It's got people like Melanie Linsky in it, and other people. It's got Timothy Chalamet. I like what it does, but I think that I know it was difficult to make because of COVID, but I think that they did a very good job of it. And Mark Rylance playing the kind of tech billionaire who totally screws things up is really good. I think he's going to be getting some award nominations in the same way that Cumberbatch and probably Cody Smith McPhee and Jesse Plemons and Kirsten Dunst may well do for The Power of the Dog. So they're the ones I really like that came out this year. I always find old movies that I watch for the first time revelations, but it's nice that the streaming services I have are starting to put out some really high-grade movies so that I don't have to risk a cinema. I don't have to try to find out whether my local cinema is showing them. And I can stream them and wind back if I need to. And it's just that convenience factor and the fact that the product being put out, particularly by Netflix and Amazon and a few of the others, is really at film quality. It's at cinema quality. And I like that. And Netflix got me on board when they did do the edit on all of the source material for Orson Welles' The Other Side of the Wind. That really did impress me, and it reassured me that cinema does have a future, even though it may be in a different delivery system. Next piece of vinyl. This movie needs a Blu-ray release. If it hasn't had one already, it needs one. I really like it. It's an adaptation of an opera in a totally different context. Carmen Jones from the 1950s. It's got Harry Belafonte and Dorothy Dandridge in it, and Pearl Bailey. Fantastic soundtrack, even though some of the actors aren't singing their songs and they're dubbed. But I really like it. Pearl Bailey does her own version. And adapting Bizet's Carmen as a musical about black soldiers in World War II is kind of an interesting concept. And even though it was not as incredibly successful as it should have been, I really like it as well. It's got a really nice picture of Dorothy Dandridge on the back there. I think I might want to revisit this one at some stage, but of course after January when I'm doing only new movies. But I like Carmen Jones a lot. I think I saw it on late night TV once upon a time. And ever since then, it really impressed me. Holly says, I'm so glad they're reassembling the Magnificent Ambersons. Heartbreaking to know that it was Orson's tipping point. And we never got to see what film would have been and what Orson may have become. Absolutely. He did that thing where he went to South America to make documentaries for the war effort so that North and South America would both be allied against the Nazis. And he had such a good time down there. The studio didn't wait for Magnificent Ambersons, and they got Robert Wise to cut it, which is one of the reasons I don't particularly like Robert Wise. Happy New Year's, Sir Servo. It isn't quite New Year here yet. We've still got 18 minutes to go. Threspondo, yeah, hi, how you doing? Glad you're here. Comfort enjoyed Bill Forsyth. Yeah, I really should rewatch that. Here we go. We're getting more spam at the moment. Hi, user on this channel. There we go. Okay, no problem at all there. Yeah, Comfort and Joy I haven't seen since it first came out, and I really should revisit that. Like I said, I'm going to go through the chat and figure all of the movies that are recommended that I really want to see again. But again, that's going to be February, so I'll have to do that. Okay. So, Christopher, you're talking about Carmen Jones. Yeah. I think that's a movie that really does need to be revisited. Bill Forsyth, my drama teacher, had a bit part in his first movie, That Sinking Feeling. Cool. We didn't get much of that here in Australia. The only thing I got was a friend of a friend was on a TV series briefly. But I don't travel in circles where creative people dwell, apart from writers. I do know a lot of fine writers, but for the most part, that's the extent of things. So, Survey, glad I haven't missed New Year's Eve. Stateside in the Midwest, so I have like 17 hours before mine. Yeah, look, in just 16 minutes, I'll tell you what 2022 is like. I'll tell you what the future's like, Sir Servo, and give you a little bit of a hint about it. Next one. Next vinyl. And there's a big stack here, by the way. It's not a small stack of vinyl. It's like a big stack of vinyl. This one I like, and it starts out with Anne Margaret singing Bye Bye Birdie. It's a movie soundtrack. It's not the, it's actually not, this is the stage soundtrack with Chita Rivera and Dick Van Dyke. Kay Medford's in it as well. It's got Paul Lind. The reason I know that is it doesn't have Jesse Pearson playing Conrad Birdie in it. It's got Dick Gautier, which is the guy who played Jaime in Get Smart. He was the original Conrad Birdie on stage. So this is actually a stage original Broadway cast album that I picked up somewhere. It doesn't tell me where. It's an Australian pressing of it. Micro Groove, play at 33 and a third revolutions per minute. Per second? Yeah, per minute, yeah. So, yeah, that one I like. Good, solid satire on popular culture, particularly the fame of Elvis Presley. I really like that. Nice set design, too. Have a look at that. That's the telephone hour set. I like that. That's such an early 1960s theatrical set. I really like that. Oh, great film too. I really enjoyed the movie. So yeah, I've got so many more bits of vinyl here. Some of the movies, some of them I've really got to rewatch, I think. But yeah, let's see. We've got that's 16 minutes to go before midnight, and I'm going to keep an eye on that because I really want to hit the midnight hour. I'm not going to let off the confetti shooter, which is only slightly louder than a shotgun, and it's my ear's still ringing from it when I just let off one of the cartridges there. Let's see. Let me know if you see this movie because it's a real, and we're getting more spam bots, which is always wonderful. Okay, let's see. Yeah, this one. Let me know if you've seen this movie because I really like it, and there are so many bits of it I like. Let's have a look here. The Little Prince, the movie that's got Richard Kiel in it. It's got Gene Wilder playing a fox. It's got Bob Fosse in his last singing and dancing role, playing basically the devil. And it's a kind of epic failure of a movie, but it's got so many great moments in it that I really like it. It just is a kind of hidden gem in a sense, and a kind of hidden gem semi-failure. And there's the back of it. There's Gene Wilder. He plays the fox. He's in the suit, so he's playing it as a human. And I've hit the boom arm again. He's playing it as a human, but he's playing it acting physically like a fox. And it's great. Yeah, Barry, absolutely. This movie's got so many cool moments in it. And the soundtrack is good because it's a musical. Really like it. Have I ever seen a movie called Lucentia? Or however you say that. Claudia Cardinale and Ugo Tognazzi. The plot's a bit odd and talky, but the soundtrack's the most amazing music played on harpsichord and tubular bells. No, I haven't seen it, but I will add it to the list. Ali says, one thing I always said, do for one lot is buy an old movie theatre and bring back double features and old movie B houses. Yeah, absolutely. If I was wealthy, I would grab a flea pit and just do things with it. We've only got one single screen cinema left here in Melbourne. It's a place called the Astor, which is owned by Palace, a distribution company. And they do that. They put double features up. On the weekends, they tend to do things. So they'll do like 2 Preston Sturgis movies or 2, Sam Peckinpah movies and things like that. And then during the week, they'll do kind of art house films as well. And it's a beautiful old Art Deco cinema, just the best looking place ever. And it's been restored, and it's kind of changed hands a few times. At one stage, a school owned it as an auditorium, and it was almost torn down and lost, but it's been saved, and it's really great. I went and saw The Hateful Eight on that, and I saw it in Super Panavision, the original aspect ratio with the original lenses that they use for that particular format. And it was just a fantastic experience in the cinema to see something in an aspect ratio using a lens system that has only been used like a dozen times in cinema history. It was just such a fun place. So yeah, a good flippy. I'll probably pick one out in the country a little bit because there are more of them that have survived there and they're being used for other purposes by the local community. But I think that there's a certain style to the old ones in the country parts of Australia that a lot of the city ones don't have, because a lot of city ones have been ripped down and turned into kind of IKEA apartments. But yeah, absolutely. And one of the great fun things about owning a cinema would be putting your double features together and just picking the movies you want to do. And that would be the real thing, is like putting together a program for a 3-month period and then printing out posters for it and just kind of doing what I do, talking about movies on a much larger scale, but actually showing people the films. That would be a fantastic thing to do. It would be a shit ton of work, but I'm sure it'd be worthwhile to do. And you'd have to gather a kind of small community of passionate people around you to do it. But yeah, it would be just the best. By the way, we've got 10 minutes to go before midnight. I'll do another soundtrack here. This one's going to be a bit obvious, but I really like it. It's a great, I'll give you that double feature in a moment, Christopher, as soon as I do this. Great John Barry soundtrack, Goldfinger, which I really like. It's got the songs by Leslie Bricusse and Anthony Newley and John Barry. It's just a great album cover too, by the way. And I haven't watched Goldfinger for a long time. I really should, because I do like Gerd Frober in it, even though his voice is being dubbed by Eric Portman. Really a great soundtrack and a great Bond film. It's got some stills on the back of Sean Connery being Sean Connery in a sense. But yeah, I'm glad I got a copy of this one, because if nothing else, I can just put it up in a frame and it'll look good on a wall. Yeah, Shirley Bassey in there, Hal, absolutely. Best double feature. Oh, if I put together a double feature, what would it be? Let's see. One half of it would have to be Thief of Baghdad, the 1940 Alexander Korda, Alan Pressburger one. Second half of it, let's see, what else would be in the same realm as Thief of Baghdad? Probably one of those Maria Montez and John Hall movies like Siren of Atlantis or something. There are a couple of ones that are really done in kind of intense Technicolor. Kind of those kind of lost civilization adventures. I'd mix it up with one of those, probably one of the Maria Montez, John Hall ones, and just kind of go with that. That'd be a fun one to do. There are just so many different ones. Yeah, I could do a couple of westerns. I could do kind of Will Penny matched up with the Wild Bunch or something like that. That'd be kind of cool. You only live I'll tell you the story about when I first saw You Only Live Twice while we're on the subject, and we got a few minutes before midnight. Saw it when I was a kid, because when I was a kid, we used to go out into the country in a place called Warren in the middle of New South Wales, way out in the country. It's in cotton territory where they grow cotton. And they had an outdoor cinema, which is basically walls around an area. The cinema area itself is undercover, but everywhere where people sit is out in the open, because it doesn't rain all that much out that way. And You Only Live Twice was one of the movies that I saw there. And the weird thing about it, and this is kind of the darker side of Australia's history, so it's like late 1960s. And so I go, there's got a little fence about about waist height to a small kid, and an area of seats in front of that fence and a larger area of seats at the back. And so I go down and sit down the front, because I liked sitting down the front at the time. I've since learned not to do that. But I wanted to go sit down the front, so I decided to sit down the front with these other group of kids that are there. And all the kids I'm with pull me back over the fence and go, "Don't sit there. That's where the Aboriginal kids sit." And they had a segregated area at the front of this open air cinema where Indigenous kids had to sit separately than white kids. And that was my first real kind of introduction to racism, and I didn't think it was right then. I still don't think it's right now. And I was kind of pissed off all the way through You Only Live Twice. Nice though it was, and fun though it was my introduction to racism, which is kind of odd, but again, you travel and where things are going to happen. Let's have a look. One of my favorite SF double features, Forbin Project and Journey to the Far Side of the Sun Hell. Yeah, I can see that. They're of the same age. They've both got a look about them, and they're both good science fiction movies. Absolutely. Colin says, I'd like to occasionally make a double feature out of a movie and its remake with 2 movies based on the same novel. Manhunter and Red Dragon, for example. Yeah, I can see the attraction in there. Though I tend to want to see different things in a double feature, kind of mesh 2 things that don't quite fit together, or that are thematically similar. That will work. What I think about Nazis in South America triple feature: Notorious, Gilda, Boys from Brazil. I counted 23. I've got a better one than one of those films. You could also chuck in Run for the Sun with Richard Widmark and Trevor Howard about Nazis in Mexico. So that'd be the one to do. Do I feel manipulated by soundtrack at time? John Williams is a big offender. Not even sure I really did like Star Wars now, Brian. Yeah, I think John Williams is over the top, and I think he does bash you about the face and neck with the soundtracks a lot. I kind of like people like John Barry more than John Williams because I know a number of good John Barry soundtracks, and they're kind of cool, and I think that they've got a lot more nuance to them than a lot of the John Williams ones. Though having said that, I do like his soundtracks he did for the Owen Allen TV series. I think he had the right tone for those ones. Going to do another piece of vinyl before we hit midnight. This one's actually a weird kind of link into a TV series from the 1960s, early 1960s. Ed Burns as Kooky from 77 Sunset Strip singing a bunch of songs. Now, he wasn't a great singer. I picked this one up. It's also got Connie Stevens, Joni Summers, and some other friends, it says. But I like this vinyl because I picked it up at a secondhand place in Yarra Bend. And it's just got that 1960s look and style about it. There's Ed Burns singing his heart out. I like this kind of stuff from the 1960s where they get people who are popular in TV series and then make them sing, even if they couldn't. So, yeah, that one's kind of blast from the past and might even be worth a little bit of money now, come to think of it. But that's it. Let's see, 57. So we're almost there. We're almost at 2022, which sounds so futuristic. And yes, I know it is the year that Soylent Green was supposed to be set. But in the original novel, it was 1999. So thanks for the idea concerning Run for the Sun. I really like Richard Widmark and Trevor Howard. It's also got Jane Greer in it, who was in Out of the Past. And really good. Hal says I should hear Cookie's Christmas album. Do I really need to? Yeah, but that's the one I've got, and it's kind of fun. Can I squeeze another one in? No, I can't. So I'm going to get my other glow stick ready. I promised I would crack another glow stick when we hit midnight. I can't let off the confetti cannon because it's incredibly noisy, and I've got cats and a sleeping wife to consider. So it's 11:58 now here. Let's see, getting more spam, which is always a wonderful thing. Yeah, it's such fun to get the spam messages. Tends to be at certain times of day. Okay, yeah, so I do have basically I've gone through less than half of the vinyl. So after we hit midnight, I'm going to do all of the rest of the vinyl and just kind of talk about them. Let's see, still 11:58. What can I just do to fill a minute and 20 seconds on the channel? I won't crack the glow stick yet. I've got one. I think it may turn out to be blue or yellow. I just don't know at this stage. But yeah, I'm really going to have to listen to more of my vinyl because I've got it there. I've got a record player behind this shelf here, and it's a pretty good one. So I really should just kick back and watch some of the vinyl. Happy New Year. Not quite yet. I've got another half a minute or so to go, son of a ratio. But thank you. I appreciate the sentiment, but we're going to get there. And as soon as it clicks over, I will wish you all Happy New Year. And I really hope that 2022 is much better for us all. 2021's been a tough year for many, many people. But we've reached this far and we're doing okay. Brett says, hello, just watched Blues Brothers on SBS for the first time. Cool. I hope you enjoy it. We're starting to get fireworks noises. If you hear popping in the background, it's arseholes letting off fireworks and scaring animals. And it's not quite okay. Ali, take care. Thank you very much for dropping in. Garch Tail, thanks for doing what you do. Enjoy your videos. Thank you very much. And it is 2022. So happy New Year, everybody. Hope you have a great year. And yeah, we're getting all of those explosions outside now. And if the cats want to come into the room, they can come into the room as well. And yeah, it's crazy noisy out here. I'm going to take the headphones off just for a sec. Yeah, we've got neighbors who buy illegal fireworks and let them off in the street. And it's not a large street. So, yeah, thank you, Colin. Thank you, Servo. Fireworks here in the background of Forest Hill. Yeah, but you guys get it over that way as well. Lionel, thank you very much. Happy New Year. Hope everybody really has such a good year because we deserve it and times are tough. And thank you, FG. Thank you from the other Italian Kansas. I'm sure there's 3 or 4 others. Yeah, absolutely. I'm really optimistic. One of the things I do with my, with the new year is I try to stay optimistic with it. Don't always succeed because with my PTSD, there are times when you have ups and downs and things like that. But I kind of like the idea of marking a line in time and really making it a time to start something new, to be fresh, to kind of, yeah, Dr. John is in Queensland at the moment, and Queensland doesn't do daylight saving. And so it's still an hour away from midnight for him. And yeah, I'm really optimistic about 2022. I think that hopefully Australia will get a change of government. And again, I'm not going to dive too deeply into our politics. But I think we need a change, and I think we need grown-ups to be running things. Kind of consider us the way America was in like 2019, heading into 2020. We're in the same kind of dilemma, let's say. FG, do I have a New Year's resolution? Well, I've got the one for January, which is only to watch films I haven't seen before. I do want to get more exercise in because I need to. And I'm kind of changing my diet slightly, but not really resolutions as much as kind of course changes. Brian and Grant, thank you very much. Yeah, Brian, you're in Adelaide. 2022 is still half an hour away. Well, based on the last 2 minutes, 2022 is going to be great. So, yeah, with 2 minutes in, things are going well so far. Yeah, I do like Adelaide, Brian. I love Metwurst. I'm really going to have to find somewhere that sells Metwurst because you guys have the best small goods over there, heading up into Harndorf and all of those places with the little German delis and schnitzel places and that. I really do like. Yeah, Icon 23. Let's hope that 2023 gives an end to COVID fascism and return to freedom. I'm not sure that virus has political affiliations. Yeah, absolutely, Brett. Yeah, we've got to make changes here. By the way, we are free. I mean, I'm free to do whatever I like, but if I do, there are consequences to it. But I'm not going to go into the politics of it. I want the year to be better, and I think the way to start it is to be optimistic about things because I think that the job of everybody is utopia. We've got to head towards something approaching a utopia, and I do my little bits. I do this stuff with the movies, and I try to keep people interested and distracted from doom scrolling and things like that, and really making the world a better place. I mean, there are things I can't do. I can't cure diseases, and I'm not the sort of person who can go and work as a nurse, but I can at least keep people entertained and show them things that make the world a little bit easier for them to live in. Hal sent me $10, US $10. Thank you very much, Hal. I appreciate that a lot. I'll go on to the next vinyl there with the super chat in place. Pal Joey, Rita Hayworth, Kim Novak, Frank Sinatra. Good soundtrack. The songs are terrific. The movie itself is kind of interesting, even though it is kind of, it strays well away from the original play. By the way, the person who played Pal Joey originally on Broadway was Gene Kelly, but they got Sinatra to do the album and to do the movie, and I kind of like it. I think it may be slightly dated as far as a film's concerned. The morality of it's definitely dated, but I do like the album, and it's a nice one to listen to because I am a big Sinatra fan. I think Sinatra, when he was good, was fantastic, and when he was just kind of phoning it in, he was phoning it in. And I do like the Pal Joey soundtrack, and again, it's one of those things where, yeah, it's one of the better Sinatra films. He did a few shit films, but for the most part, his movies were great. Vincent Rapper, Happy New Year. Yeah, 2022, good so far. 1 second at a time. Let's just get through it. This is a soundtrack that I recommend to everybody, and I've hit the bloody boom arm again. This is a soundtrack that I recommend to everybody. Watch it on YouTube, whatever you need to do. But you need to hear that, particularly the theme from this. It's by somebody that I think has only done a couple of movie soundtracks, a guy called Richard Rodney Bennett. Murder on the Orient Express with Albert Finney and Lauren Bacall, Martin Balsam and all of those guys, Sean Connery and John Gielgud. But the soundtrack album by Richard Rodney Bennett is a must-have in your collection. If you collect movie soundtracks, this is one of the good ones. And I really do love it. I think that it's got a grandeur about it. It does such a fantastic job of evoking the time and place in which it occurs. And Richard Rodney Bennett, the other soundtrack he did was $1 Billion Brain, the Harry Palmer movie. And I really do like his work. I haven't got the soundtrack to $1 Billion Brain, but I've got this one because there were tons of them around secondhand here in Australia for some reason. And this one is a real recommend. There's nothing much on the back of the album. It's pretty bare bones, but it works so well, and I really like it a lot. So if you ever see a copy of this around and you're into vinyl at all, this is a definite one to pick up. It really is a fine soundtrack. The movie itself, I've got a few problems with. I think it's a little bit too methodical, but really a great soundtrack album. And by the way, I've only dragged out about half of the ones I've got. This next one I've got hang on, let me just cough again. Claudio, Happy New Year. Now I'm from Portugal. Wow. We are covering the waterfront here, aren't we? I hope you're staying warm there, mate, and everything's going nicely. This one, if you can find the movie itself, it's not in great condition. I think it's in a old Academy ratio, but it's really interesting. New Faces of 1952, which had an incredible cast. It was a Broadway play originally, and they filmed it partly from there. It's got Eartha Kitt in it. It's got Paul Lynde. It's got Alice Ghostley. It's just and some of the songs and skits were written by Mel Brooks in a very early bit of work that he did. Let's have a look here. Got to put another spam bot in off the channel. But if you haven't seen New Faces in 1952, I've got a couple of copies of this. One's in better nick than the other. But if you have a look here, it says sketches mostly by Ronnie Graham and Melvin Brooks. So, yeah, I really like this one. I like watching it. I really should rewatch the movie too, because it's an interesting little oddity of a film. Not shot particularly well. They used the original stage sets from the play, but the soundtrack is funny It's got a musical about Lizzie Borden in it as well. RSFX, I'm wishing you all good things, health, creative inspiration, and lots of great movie watching for 2022. You too. Hope we find some new stuff that's great, because 2021's actually produced some good movies. That glow stick's still going pretty well there. Got that one. That's not actually green, by the way. It looks green on my screen, but it's actually blue. And this one's kind of purpley pink. But let's move on, because I've got a few more soundtracks here, and I really want to get through them before we do the 2 hours. Good. The fireworks have stopped a bit, so the cats are going to be less freaked out. This one's a bit of a bombastic soundtrack. It's not really a toe tapper. Yeah, it's got Mel Brooks and Paul Lynde in it. And it really is a lot of fun, the New Faces soundtrack. This one is a very bombastic kind of soundtrack, but it's a very much a landmark movie. Spartacus, which broke the blacklist by hiring Dalton Trumbo to do the script. Kirk Douglas did that. Of course, it's music conducted by Alex North, based on a novel by Howard Fast, directed by Stanley Kubrick. I'm really going to have to revisit Spartacus at some stage as well, though big epics like that take up a lot of your time to watch. John A, happy New Year from Great White North. Great. Stay warm up there. You guys are so silly to have a country that's attached to a polar ice cap. I mean, it's just not the thing to do, particularly this time of year. We actually had a really hot day today. We had 39 degrees centigrade, which is fairly hot for us. There are other parts of Australia that get that on a regular basis. But I am Spartacus. I am Spartacus too. And so is Tony Curtis. But yeah, Spartacus is great. And it's got that fantastic dialogue between Laurence Olivier and Tony Curtis, which is really kind of alludes to certain alternative sexualities in a very interesting way. In the same way that Masala and Ben-Hur really has that kind of subtext between Stephen Boyd and Charlton Heston. Yeah, Brad, it is the second best. Paths of Glory is the best Kirk Douglas Stanley Kubrick movie. Saw Spartacus in Glasgow Film Theatre about 30 years ago when they released a restored print column. Yeah, that would be so good to see in the big screen. I haven't had the opportunity to, but I wouldn't mind it. I think that kind of leaves me conflicted, because are we ever going to be able to kind of sit in a large audience and watch movies in cinemas again? I don't know. I'm not sure what the future brings in that area, but I appreciate the thought. It would be just such a cool thing. Richard Riley Bennett's soundtrack for $1 Billion Brain was hauntingly beautiful. Absolutely, EMS3 recombination. I love it. I think it's a great soundtrack. I just picked up the box set of the three Harry Palmer films from that era. I'm looking forward to going through them again and just kind of enjoying that 1960s alternative Bond kind of thing. Wait until VR is good enough, said Colin. Yeah, that's probably true. This next one's a little bit of a deep cut, because I do like Kurt Weill stuff. It's Knickerbocker Holiday, You and Me, Where We Go From Here, and a movie that I recommend a lot called One Touch of Venus. Now, if you haven't seen One Touch of Venus, it's got Ava Gardner playing the goddess Venus in it. She's a statue, comes to life. And Robert Walker falls in love with her. She falls in love with him. It's got Eve Arden in it as well. Fantastic little hidden gem of a manic pixie dream girl movie from the late 1940s. If you haven't seen One Touch of Venus, you really should try to track down a copy of it, because it's a charming little film. And it's got Tom Conway in it too. George Sanders' brother, Tom Conway. And I've got my George Sanders soundboard here. Ready?
Miss Caswell is an actress, a graduate of the Copacabana School of Dramatic Art.
Yeah, so I like that soundtrack album as well. Regarding Alex North, do you have his 2001 Space Odyssey soundtrack? I don't. I really should get it. It's not that difficult to find. Rodney Bennett's score for Lady Carol Lamb soundtrack was released on EMI. Yeah, that'd be an interesting one to find. I'm going to have to try to track down some of the tracks from that because I do like Richard Rodney Bennett's stuff. And I think that he wasn't a guy who was very mainstream as far as composing for film was concerned. He did a lot of classical work and he kind of composed for orchestral things and things like that. But such a fantastic, different kind of creative person to work in movies. I really love what he did. This next one everybody knows because it's a science fiction movie kind of, and it's also one of the first mockumentaries in a sense. Yeah, I love George Sanders' Round Vowels as well. I like him in so many movies. It's crazy. Dealey, I've been in cinemas a lot lately. I think they will endure. We might have to work out some new ground rules. Absolutely, Dealey. I agree. Village of the Dam was a great movie. I think that George Sanders was such an underrated actor and he tended to get stereotyped. But I always loved his work, and I think that he tended to dismiss his talents a little bit himself, but I love what he did. Privilege. I've got the soundtrack to Privilege, the movie directed by Peter Watkins with Paul Jones and Gene Shrimpton in a near future kind of English thing. If you haven't seen Privilege, you should. Picked this one up in a record shop in San Francisco on that trip that I did in 1998 to America, and I really like it. I think it's a good, solid soundtrack. It's got I Beat a Bad, Bad Boy, Onward Christian Soldiers, the kind of fascist version of that. The other tracks are interesting because there's one called I'm All Right, Jackboot. Birmingham, Birmingham. Yeah, it's an interesting record. There's the back of it. It doesn't give you much more than that, but I'm kind of glad that I got that because at the time I got it, you couldn't find the movie. It wasn't even on VHS in Australia, so I managed to get the soundtrack well before I ever got anything to do with the movie. Apart from that, I've now got a copy of the movie, but Privilege's soundtrack I really liked and enjoyed. Just let me take a drink. There we go, 16 minutes into 2022, and things are still going well. Now, this one's an oddity. George Sanders' brother was great in Captive. Absolutely. He was also in I Walk with the Zombie. Tom Conway. I've got two of these. I've got one with Dirk Bogarde, but I've also got this other one. Have I covered Privilege in your videos? Not in any detail. I probably should. Maybe I should put together a video about Peter Watkins' movies in general. And I can cover Privilege and Punishment Park and those other ones. But this one is, just give me a second. This one is Love Poems spoken by Lawrence Harvey. This is a weird one. There are a few of these that came out. There was one with Dirk Bogarde and there's one with Lawrence Harvey. Barry says I brought an original film poster for Privilege. Still needs framing. Definitely needs framing because I think it'd be a great one to have up anywhere. One of the problems I've got is I've got so many movie posters I don't have enough walls to put them on, or enough frames for that matter. But this one's a weird one. It's just kind of basically Lawrence Harvey reciting love poetry. And of course, women would have liked that at the time. But again, this is a kind of tangential to movie oddity. And when I see stuff like this, I pick it up. And I also pick up albums of movie actors singing. I've got one of Chad Everett. I've got one of Michael Parks. It's a really interesting subgenre of music where basically actors who weren't known for singing did albums. Harvey was good in Manchurian Candidate, absolutely. He was also really good in Dandy and Aspic, a 1960s spy movie, which I want to pick up a copy of at some stage. But yeah, next vinyl is one, it should be in your collection. If you collect vinyl at all, if you collect movie soundtracks in any way, yeah, Lawrence Harvey was an interesting guy, complex character. But this one should be in your soundtrack. Yeah, the Manchurian Candidate does love poetry. Yeah, absolutely. The War Game, banned by the BBC. Absolutely. I'd be looking at the whole lot of Peter Watkins' work if I was going to do a video about that. But this one should be in William Shatner reciting MacArthur Park. Oh, no. Anyway, I'm going to move along to this next one, which I really like a lot. Nino Rota's soundtrack to La Dolce Vita. I could listen to this one endlessly. The kind of changes in tone, the different use of instrumentation you got with American and English composers. I want to rewatch La Dolce Vita. I know it's a long movie. I did it for the radio a few years ago with Liz Travascus, and neither of us realized that it was almost a 3-hour film. We just had to go into the guts of La Dolce Vita to talk about it on the radio. But it's just such a movie. It's one of those movies I find very immersive. It just grabs you and carries you into the world of Marcello and the La Dolce Vita Rome and the Via Veneto and the Trevi Fountain, all that kind of stuff. Grant says 1957's Hell Drivers on Blu-ray has dropped through my mailbox. Great, lots of extras too. Yeah, Hell Drivers I like. It's just all of these up-and-coming English actors just going head-to-head in that movie. You got Stanley Baker, who was the established guy. You got McGowan in there. You've got Connery in there. You've got Sid James, David McCallum. It's just like they're all kind of going bam, 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 and just kind of punching together. Yeah, I love French New Wave cinema. Absolutely, yeah, it's Italian. I was going to say Digital Pollution, but you fixed it up. Yeah, Italian cinema is great. I like. I'm going to have to dive into more Fellini. There's some Fellini movies I haven't seen. I haven't seen La Strada yet. I haven't seen Juliet of the Spirits yet, and I really do want to kind of do that. War Games and Threads. Yeah, Thresh Bondo. Yeah, you may need to kind of take a mood elevator after that one because that double feature is not going to end well for you. La Dolce Vita is another one you haven't seen. Brett, you should see it. Spend 3 hours and just immerse yourself in La Dolce Vita. It's just marvelous. And Marcello was just so great. One of the things I've heard about Marcello Mastroianni, and I agree with it, is that he's the most passive romantic leading man in cinema history. He's always acted upon in movies. He's not the one who initiates action. And that makes him kind of interesting because people lean in to watch his performances because of that. Really a fascinating kind of thing. This one's a kind of a breakthrough film based on a breakthrough Rodgers and Hammerstein musical. And it's Flower Drum Song, which has an entirely Asian cast. It's got Juanita Hall in it. Just so many good people. Nancy Kwan's in this one. Jack Sue is really great in this as well. James Shigeta and Benson Fong's in there. It's just an interesting film, and I like the soundtrack as well. The soundtrack to this one's really great. It's one of the later Rodgers and Hammerstein movies and one of the later plays as well. And they do that thing where they have Japanese actors playing Chinese characters and Chinese characters playing Japanese, all that kind of thing. It's pretty good in They're a Weird Mob. They're a Weird Mob was Walter Chiari. It wasn't Marcello Mastroianni. Walter Chiari was much more outgoing than Marcello, I think. And he had an affair with Ava Gardner as well, so he's a lucky bastard as well. But yeah, Flower Drum Song I kind of like. I got a thing for movie musicals at times, so I picked this one up quite cheaply. Like I got a lot of this fun. I got it secondhand. This was $3 in 1999. I got this. But yeah, so like I said, I've got a wide range of movie soundtracks to play with here. 23 minutes into 2022, and we're still going well. While I'm doing this, you throw in some questions if you have them as well, and I'll get through this. Still got some vinyl to go because that's how I roll. Thoughts on Robert Quarry, Cat Yoga movies, picked up Madhouse, Vincent Price, Peter Cushing, and Michael Parkinson. Robert Quarry is kind of interesting because I don't think he tried hard. I think that he tended to play on his looks and he tended to have a certain loose charm about him. But if you contrast him with Vincent Price had some depth to him. If you have a look at a lot of Vincent Price roles early on, and even things like Last Man on Earth, Vincent Price is fantastic in Last Man on Earth. It really does give you the anguish of being the last guy who's not a vampire. And he did a number of other roles as well where he is really good. But I don't think Robert Quarry cared enough about the art. Yeah, well, Michael Parkinson is in that movie in Madhouse. Yeah, Michael Parkinson Parky. But excuse me. Yeah, that fight was real. I've actually got Trader Faulkner's autobiography here in the man cave. Can't lay my hands on it right now, but he did an autobiography. Yeah, young Vincent Price was good in Laura. Last Man on Earth, back to back with Omega Man. Yeah, I think that Omega Man has the scale, but Last Man on Earth has the horror. And I can't really buy the vampires in the Omega Man as much because they just look like people in pancake makeup. And they don't emphasize the menace as much as they do in Last Man on Earth. Look, they're a weird mob to reread, but I'm getting feeling that John O'Grady is frowned upon these days. I think if you go onto eBay, you'll find a number of them. I did look a few years ago. I was looking for something else John O'Grady did, and I'm pretty sure you'll find them pretty easily on eBay, Brian. Next soundtrack album, Never on Sunday, which is such a cool movie. Jules Dassin and Milena McCurry. He was married to her at the time. It's a fantastic soundtrack. Milena McCurry was fantastic in it as well. I liked her also in Top Carpy, which Jules Dassin did. Yeah, Will Smith's I Am Legend. Never go to see that one. But I like this. I like the Greek instrumentation. I like the style of it. And there were so many. It was Manos Hadjikakis did the album, did the soundtrack to this one. And it really is a fun movie. And I kind of like this cover as well. Even though it doesn't particularly look like Milena McCurry, it covers the feel of the movie in a nice way. And if you haven't seen this film, it's a lot of fun. And it's also a bit of a love letter between Jules Dassin and Milena McCurry. You can tell that the director and also the star of the film, because Jules Dassin was in the film as well, was in love with Milena McCurry at the time. She ended up being the Greek Minister for Culture in her later years, which is kind of interesting as well. But nothing much on the back of the cover, but again, an interesting soundtrack, which is from a very fun movie. Yeah, the Book of I Am Legend is great. Richard Matheson. Richard Matheson also did The Incredible Shrinking Man and a whole bunch of other things, including Trilogy of Terror. So speaking of Italian films, have I seen Samson and the Seven Miracles of the World, Giant of Metropolis, Hercules, all the Peplum movies, and the Machiste ones? Yeah, there used to be this thing on TV on Sundays on Channel 9 here in Australia called Amphitheatre, where they get all of those Peplum movies and just run them on Sundays after the wrestling. The wrestling was on at 12 o'clock, World Championship Wrestling, where they had the local wrestling. And then they throw Amphitheatre on, and you end up seeing weird kind of Peplum movies with people like Gordon Scott in them and Steve Reeves and all that kind of thing. And I kind of haven't watched Peplum movies for a long time, but they were definitely part of my upbringing. Yeah, Richard Matheson did do a lot of Twilight Zone episodes. Really interesting writer, and I think that his stuff stands the test of time as well. One core concept, and just runs with it. It really is kind of interesting film, interesting writer. Now, I didn't realize I put the soundtrack into the list as well. 28 minutes into the year, and we're still doing well. This one was from my 24-hour movie marathon I did a while. And I kind of enjoyed rewatching the movie, and the soundtrack is at least as good as the film. High Society, Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby. It's got Louis Armstrong in there as well. Cole Porter's music. You can't go wrong. Kind of like the artwork on this one as well, because the artwork is very, very 1950s in style. Yeah, Somewhere in Time was one of the lesser Richard Matheson ones. It had Jane Seymour and Christopher Reeve in it. Didn't like it as that much. Yeah, the Gladiator movies. Yeah, after the wrestling, Brett. That's when it was on. After the wrestling, you watch a Gladiator movie and have a bit of fun. Matheson did write Jewel based on his personal experience. Yeah, one of two good things Dennis Weaver did as an actor. The other one being Touch of Evil. Yeah, I haven't watched Jewel in a long time. It's early Spielberg, so you didn't get that emotionally manipulative stuff. The thing I really liked of Spielberg's early career was Los Angeles 2017, the episode of Name of the Game he did, where Gene Barry's character got transported into a polluted future. If you haven't seen Los Angeles 2017, you should be able to find it on YouTube. And it's a lot of fun to watch. It really is an interesting little futuristic speculation, which I really liked. Did Richard Matheson write that? I'm just going to find out who wrote Los Angeles 2017. Sorry, just excuse me for a second. See, Phil Wiley, the guy who did When Worlds Collide, wrote it. That's who it was. But yeah, I'll just leave aside High Society. So check out Los Angeles 2017 if you get a chance to. Oh, it's a shame, Brian, that your mother didn't like Frankie. Don't like Bing Crosby as a person. He beat up his kids, and that for me is kind of a red flag. It's an early Spielberg directing gig, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Spielberg directed Los Angeles 2017 for Name of the Game, which is an interesting series because it was one of those wheel shows where it had the same format and they're all working for the same magazine. But Gene Barry, Anthony Franciosa, and I think Doug McClure in it. Really interesting concept to have those kind of wheel shows where the stars only had to work 1 week in 3. But yeah, you should check out LA 2017, everyone. Here's another soundtrack to a musical which is crazily underrated because it was more grown up than a lot of musicals in the 1950s. It's Always Fair Weather with Gene Kelly, Dan Daly, Sid Charisse. It's also got Michael Kidd in it. About 3 war buddies who meet up after 10 years after the war and find out that they each changed in ways. Really, Robert Stack was in it as well. Hal, you were right in Name of the Game. I'm thinking of Doug McClure in the series he did with Hugh O'Brien and Anthony Franciosa. But yeah, It's Always Fair Weather. If you haven't seen It's Always Fair Weather, it's got Gene Kelly dancing on roller skates for a start. It's got Sid Charisse looking marvelous. But it's actually a musical. It's got a little bit of depth to it. And it really didn't grab the public as much because they weren't ready for it. And Dolores Gray, who's in there, was also in Kismet, is fantastic in this one. Happy New Year, Brian. You finally arrived, have you, mate? Yeah, great. See, 2022 is a good year already. But definitely check out It's Always Fair Weather if you get a chance to, because it's an underrated movie. It really is a direction that Hollywood didn't travel in when it came to musicals, and it really should have. Oh, you getting the fireworks there, Brian? Because ours have stopped now, fortunately, and the cats are huddled up in their little hiding spots. But yeah, dogs in particular are affected by that stuff, but cats are too. Jesus Christ Superstar and A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. Weird thing about A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, they made the movie of it and took out most of the songs. If you can find the original Broadway soundtrack with Zero Mostel, it's got a lot more Sondheim in it. It's got a lot more songs. It's a lot more fun than the movie version. I don't know why they took out the songs. I think it was a really stupid thing to do, but they did. And everybody who's kind of a musical wonk hates the fact that they did that. Yeah, Gene Barry was in The Adventurer, and Phil Wiley did Gladiator, which was the novel that inspired Superman. Gladiator was made as a movie with Joe E. Brown playing the lead character. Lee, thank you. Yucky da, dude. Yeah, it's Happy New Year from Wales. I love Kismet. Howard Keel was fun. Absolutely, Brian. Kismet's the first movie I bought on VHS was Kismet because CEL brought it out, and it was one of the first sell-through videotapes that was here in Australia. They did a few musicals, and they kind of tested the water by putting those out. And Kismet was one of them, so I bought it with my crazily expensive VHS player to go. The original featured John Carradine, and funny thing, yeah, it did. The musical is a lot of fun. The original version of the musical, you can find the soundtrack on there. You can find bits of it on YouTube from various productions. But why would you do a Sondheim musical as a big screen movie and take out most of Sondheim? It just doesn't make sense to me. This one I've also talked about a little bit on the channel. Another really fine soundtrack. All That Jazz, the Bob Fosse movie about Bob Fosse, basically. It's an autobiographical one with Roy Scheider, Jessica Lange, and Ryan King, Leland Palmer, Cliff Gorman, Ben Vereen. If you haven't seen All That Jazz, I watched it recently. I did it this year, last year now, while I was on the radio, for the radio. And All That Jazz is just such a good movie, and the soundtrack is good too. It's got on Broadway by George Benson. It's got the erotica sequence, so it's got the music from that. It's got Everything Old is New Again by Peter Allen. Solid soundtrack and really interesting for that. And of course, the cover is falling apart, but the disc is still in good nick as well. But I really enjoyed watching All That Jazz last year. I hadn't seen it for a number of years, and I kind of liked the fact that Fosse went where he went to and portrayed himself through the Joe Gideon character played by Roy Scheider in a very negative light. And doing the kind of heart operation musical number was a particularly weird and wonderful piece of cinema. So let's see. We've got 24 minutes to go, so I better hurry this up a little bit. And then I've got to wind down from all the espressos I've got and try to get some sleep. This is another movie. Gene Barry wasn't very civil to Stuart Damon, got him sacked. Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but he probably did. Really don't like musicals. Was burnt out by the Lee and Gather Theatre Company, Brett. I kind of like Lee and Gather, but I had a really bad meat pie there once. Lee and Gather, for those of you who don't know, is about 100 kilometres east of Melbourne, up in the hills, and it's a small country town. Kind of interesting place. Oh, I should mention, I did actually see a stage production, an amateur stage production of a Hollywood musical that was really good. Many years ago, I had a girlfriend who was into amateur theatricals, and she was in a production of Brigadoon, which was done as a stage musical. Amateur, people come in and pay their money, but it wasn't a professional production. And the guy playing the Van Johnson role in that did a perfect Van Johnson all the way through the play, and he was terrific in it. And I kind of just watched it for the guy playing Van Johnson in Brigadoon, but that's a tangential thing. This movie you should see if you haven't. Black Orpheus Negro. Fantastic, set in the favelas of Rio. It's a version of Orpheus and Eurydice. And if you haven't seen Black Orpheus, Marcel Camus' movie, you really should. And the soundtrack album with the wonderful music in it by Louise Bonfa and who was it? And Antonio Carlos Jobim. Fantastic album and just a terrific movie as well. It's a magical film. It's incredibly life affirming. Brett says it was their version of Oklahoma that did it for me. Too much, sorry, with the fringe on top. Man with No Name, good afternoon from Belgium. Good afternoon, and stay warm up there. Yeah, so this is sound. It's Margaret says, I really enjoyed It's Always Fair Weather. She looked gorgeous in that. When didn't she? Yeah, she was in Warlords of Atlantis in the later years and didn't look as good, but when she danced, she always danced beautifully. But yeah, I wonder if I should do a video about Black Orpheus, because it's just such a magical film, and the soundtrack is just the best as well. There's not too much on the back there, but really a film that I treasure every time I watch it. Let's see, we'll get through these fast. The Deep. If you have the movie with Jacqueline Bisset and Nick Nolte and Lou Gossett Jr. in it, the movie that they did of it's a Peter Yates film based on Peter Benchley's novel. When people were looking for Peter Benchley material after Jaws came out, and they did that. The John Barry soundtrack to this is really great. It's one of the better later John Barry soundtracks. It's also got Donna Summer in it. Really an interesting soundtrack because they've got a kind of orchestral piece as the second half of it. Actually, the side one is Return to the Sea 2033 AD, a ballet based on the score from the motion picture The Deep. And I like this. I like the movie because I like the soundtrack, and also like Jacqueline Bisset in a wet t-shirt. But interesting film, but the soundtrack is better than the movie. It really is a nice piece of vinyl. This one, not too many Tyrone Power soundtracks out there, but I did get. And we're getting more of the spam bots. Thank you. I just get rid of that one. Ideas from the channel. Barabbas had a great, wonderful inventor score. Any thoughts on the film? I did see the film. And the film, I saw it when I was a really little kid in a drive-in. And I didn't understand it at the time. I know it had Anthony Quinn, and it was about the other guy up on the cross who got released. But I really should revisit Barabbas. I don't know whether it's a good film or not. But I don't recall anything about the soundtrack. I really should dive into that one again. I kind of got one of the plans I've got in the big book of plans is to do a video about biblical epics at one stage. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Yeah, that one's greatly just a kind of folky country music from the early part of the 20th century. It really works well. People think that George Clooney sang in that movie, but it was actually somebody doing the singing. But yeah, it's a solid soundtrack. This one I like because I like the movie kind of. The Eddie Duchin story with Tyrone Power, with Carmen Cavallo doing the piano playing, tinkly pianos kind of stuff. I've got a soft spot for this one. Not too much to talk about on that, but got another bot to get rid of. Oh, wonderful. There we go. Got rid of that one. It's an interesting soundtrack from a really bad movie. This is one of the great bad movies of the 1970s. And this one, Burt Bacharach and Hal David. The remake of Lost Horizon, done as a musical with Peter Finch in it, and Lee Vorman, and Bobby Van in there. Really a weird soundtrack and a really deeply flawed movie. I like the original movie with Edward Everett Horton's in that one, and who was it? Ronald Coleman. So the original is great, but remaking it as a musical was one of those dumb 1970s ideas that was fueled by hubris and cocaine. And it's a cringingly bad movie. If you've ever seen Lost Horizon, you know what I mean. It's a shit movie with a kind of interesting soundtrack. So I've got the soundtrack album to that. And there's Burt Bacharach conducting the orchestra. Oh, this one folds out too. So there's your cover, and you've got Liv Ullmann dancing with all the kids, and it folds out this way into basically a production piece for the movie, which is kind of weird and interesting. But yeah, the original is Claudio. Absolutely, the original is a masterpiece, and they've lost little bits of the original, but they've replaced them with stills and the audio from it. But Thrash Bondo says, I saw Lost Race as a kid. It was just surreal. Yeah, it's a mad movie. It's not as bad as Jonathan Livingston Seagull, but then few things are as bad as Jonathan Livingston Seagull, which I think got either an imprint or an indicator release on Blu-ray last year, and I never understood why. Yeah, Peter Finch I always liked, but yeah, Lost Horizon was crap. This soundtrack, Kismet. I like this. I like how Akil in it, Anne Blythe. Dolores Gray steals this movie. It's one of those Arabian Night fantasies, but it's a lot of fun. Really interesting soundtrack. A lot of the music was actually music that was borrowed from classical music by Borodin, but it works really, really well. And I like the movie. Like I said, this was one of the first movies I got on VHS. Really interesting film. In color, it looks so great. I'm not sure whether have I got a copy on DVD. I'm not sure, but if not, I'll probably find one. But I like Kismet. It's one of those things that is cultural appropriation up to here, but I kind of like it in the context of it. Only got 3 more, so we'll go with that. Yeah, not seen it for years. I watched it with my mum when I was a kid. Yeah, mum's introduced us to so many interesting films. Do I have the soundtrack album from Planet of the Apes? No, but I remember it's got great percussion in it as well. Is that a Jerry Goldsmith soundtrack? I think it might be. But this one is a movie that did come out on Imprint, put out a copy of this on Blu-ray, and I rewatched it, and it's fantastic. Day of the Locust. I've got the soundtrack to that, which is really, really... Yeah, Brian. Dolores Gray in Kismet is fantastic. But this one, Day of the Locust, a movie about Hollywood, an apocalyptic movie about Hollywood, which is really good. It's got a lot of the original kind of diegetic music at the time. Jeepers Creepers, Isn't It Romantic? I Wished on the Moon, Sing You Sinners, Hot Voodoo, Fire and Passion. Nice soundtrack, and I picked up a decent copy of it as well. Even though the album is from 1975, I really liked this one. And the fact that it used music at the time to tell the story was really good as well. Let's see, 2 more, is it? Yeah, not a bad movie from the 70s. And I've got a kind of interest in, if not a love for, bad movies from the 1970s. Let Great Cowboys Go to America. Wish I had more. Let's drum. Happy New Year from Kugel. And this is a while. Hi, and where's Kugel near? I could look it up, but soundtrack Wrath of Khan, one of the best soundtracks ever. James Horner, was it? James Horner got repetitive with his soundtrack music. But I really watched Wrath of Khan maybe 6 months ago, and I enjoyed it. I think it's a good, if slightly simple, space opera. And I think it's much better than the first Star Trek movie. The Love Machine. Dionne Warwick in it. Really interesting soundtrack for a not very interesting movie, which pivots on a plot point that these days you wouldn't get away with for very good and reasonable reasons. John Philip Law's in it as well. It's got Diane Cannon, Robert Ryan, Jackie Cooper, and David Hemmings. Really a kind of pop boiler, Jekyll and Suzanne near Kyogle. Yeah, I know Kyogle. Been through there a number of times there. Thank you. Yeah, nice part of the world, Kyogle. You guys got a bit of the bushfires, didn't you? Well, hope everything's going well. Hi, Toby. How you doing, mate? We've got about 12 minutes left on the live stream, but this one I kind of like the soundtrack album of. Best soundtrack of the 70s. I like Enter the Dragon. Lalo Schifrin's Enter the Dragon soundtrack is one of my favorites of the 70s. I may still have it on cassette. I've got a cassette player back there as well. But that Lalo Schifrin soundtrack for Enter the Dragon is just one of my favorites. But then you've got things like Superfly and Shaft in the 70s. Just so many good ones. Murder on the Orient Express is a 70s soundtrack as well. So just so many choices there. Koyaanisqatsi, one of my favorite films, with one of my favorite soundtracks. Haven't hit the soundtrack separate from the movie, but I probably should. And let's just get down to the last one. Actually, got two. First one is people, jazz singers singing songs from movies. And this one you got like Duke Ellington doing Singing in the Rain. You've got Mel Torme doing all that jazz. You got J.J. Johnson doing Laura on Green Dolphin Street, Ray Bryant. Girl Talk, Neil Hefti. Woody Herman doing Somewhere. A lot of jazz people doing versions of movie music. I kind of like these kind of albums. Love Dirty Harry soundtrack too. Who did the Dirty Harry soundtrack? Midnight Cowboy, absolutely. That was a John Barry one. Midnight Cowboy was great. The other thing I've got is the Deanna Durbin record, but there's nothing much to say about that. Taxi Driver, yeah, Taxi Driver is kind of dark as hell, isn't it? As far as the soundtrack's concerned, it really is a disturbing movie with a disturbing soundtrack. But probably if I was going to pick a favorite from the 70s, it might have to be Superfly, Curtis Mayfield's soundtrack to Superfly. For the simple reason that when I was walking through New York City in 1998, the one piece of music that was going through my head all the way through that was Pusher Man from the Superfly soundtrack. And I did go up across 110th Street. But Curtis Mayfield was just playing in my head, walking the streets of New York, and it's something that really stayed with me. Yeah, Lalo Schifrin. Okay, Lalo Schifrin did the Dirty Harry soundtrack. He did so many good things. He did one of the great soundtracks for a TV series, which is the soundtrack for Mannix, the theme from Mannix, with Mike Connors. Really a great composer. There's just so many good Lalo Schifrin soundtracks. And the stuff he did for TV was as good as the stuff he did for movies as well. One of the problems I got is that when we're talking about soundtracks, particularly TV or movie soundtracks, I can talk about them on the channel, but I can't play any of the music because I get demonetized if I do. And the channel can ultimately get destroyed if I break copyright too many times. So you've got a really narrow tightrope to walk there when you're putting music from original sources onto YouTube. I could talk about them, but I can't play them, so it's incredibly limiting. Back when I was doing podcasts, I could do whole episodes and just play the soundtracks, but I can't get away with that on YouTube. Yeah, Mission Impossible theme, and it's still being used to this day in the movie series, which is kind of an interesting thing because what the movie series did that I think is a mistake is in the TV show, you had the team was important. Everything was coordinated between the team. You had Martin Landau, Barbara Bain, you had Peter Lupus, you had Greg. I've forgotten his last name, but you got all the ensemble is what's important. And what the movies did was focus just on Ethan Hunt, the Tom Cruise character, because Tom Cruise is producing them and financing them and doing all the stunts himself. You've taken the emphasis away from the team, who are basically the chorus singing in the background of Tom Cruise, which is a shame because if it had more of a ensemble feel like the Ocean's 11 movies, I think it'd work much better. But just concentrating on the kind of empty character of Ethan Hunt doesn't do justice to the original concept. Yeah, they work as action films, but it'd be nice to see more of the other characters, like Luther Stickle played by Ving Rhames and Simon Pegg's character and those kind of people. I think that Tom Cruise swallows whatever he goes into, which is why the Dark Universe that Universal were going to do ended with The Mummy, because they didn't concentrate on The Mummy, they concentrated on Tom Cruise. Yeah, Clockwork Orange works well. That's the soundtrack. Oh, Lucky Man. Alan Price's Oh Lucky Man soundtrack. I may have a copy of it in the vinyl still that I haven't got out yet. But I like it a lot. I saw it in the cinemas when it came out, and I've liked it ever since. And I think that Alan Price's music is so integral to the movie and the songs that he sings while Malcolm McDowell's Mick Travis is wandering around his little picaresque adventures. is such a wonderful way of integrating music and cinema. It just works on so many levels, and it almost becomes like a commentary on the action. Peter Graves was great in Whiplash. Peter Graves was always stiff as a board, like James Arnessy's brother. Neither of them were particularly gifted or driven as actors. They looked good and they could say the words, but I was never convinced by the characters they played. Whiplash was great because it was an Australian series that got a bit of oxygen at a time when Australian productions just didn't play overseas for the most part. And also gave Australian actors and production crew an opportunity to learn their craft and to show themselves on screen. But what's that, Christopher? Film fop? There are so many of them. Scarlet Pimpernel. I'm not quite sure what you're getting there, Christopher. Can you put that in again? The two of the best 1970 soundtracks will be Barry Lyndon and Clockwork Orange. Both use pre-existing music rather than specifically composed scores. Yeah, that works well. Day the Locust does that to a big extent as well. Yeah, Koyaanisqatsi. I'm going to have to find the soundtrack separate from the movie. But Koyaanisqatsi was an experience in the cinemas, just overwhelming. All of that kind of documentary footage and the way it was put together. It's an incredible. It's not the kind of movie you're going to watch twice, but when you're watching it, it's immersive. It really is an interesting film. As is Powerskatsi as well, the sequel. Is that how it's seen? Not sure. It's now 12:56 here. So, yeah, soundtracks are just so important to films. Let me have a look here. Yeah, Koyaanisqatsi used to play at Encore cinemas, the kind of art house places like the Valhalla in Sydney and Melbourne. At least once a year, Powerskatsi and Koyaanisqatsi would turn up and get incredibly big stoned audiences to just kind of sit down and watch the films while self-medicating. Barry Lyndon was one of the great soundtracks from the 70s. Possibly, I didn't like the movie as much. I think I may well feel differently about it now. I haven't seen it for a number of decades. But I think Barry Lyndon, let's have a look. Terrific. Tangerine Dream. Okay. American Graffiti is one of the favorite sounds. Yeah, that one used a lot of pre-existing music. Watched a lot of Larry Cohen movies over Christmas as EMS3 recombination. After seeing my tribute to him, really enjoyed them. Yeah, Larry Cohen was just such an eclectic filmmaker. If you got a chance to, Bone, the one with Yaphet Kotto, one of his early films, was really great. Could Barry Lyndon be made today? Why not? I mean, they make films set in that era all the time. Life Out of Balance, Philip Glass. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Koyaanisqatsi was Philip Glass. Yeah. So yeah, I haven't seen it for a long time, and there are a lot of movies between me and Koyaanisqatsi. But yeah, well, I'm adding that to the list of movies I've really got to rewatch because I'm trying to break out of the easy movies, just watching films that are kind of comfort films and popcorn films. I really want to kind of bust out of that a little bit and use my movie watching time a lot better than I do. So yeah, in case you came in later, I'm not going to watch any movies in January that I've seen before. They're all going to be new films through January, so I'm just going to see how that experience goes. A Z2 North, mad movie, but a great Philip Glass score. Okay, cool. A Z2 North I saw a long time ago. RSFX, I really enjoy how well-rounded your videos are, especially since you see older films without the kind of easy glib. Let's laugh at the way people used to behave. Comments that fill the internet. Yeah, I think one of the things, if you're a cinephile rather than a dilettante, I think you appreciate movies for the historical context, what they are, how they are. Making fun of movies is an easy art. It's such a simple thing to do. I could do videos all year just taking the piss out of Star Wars movies because they're easy to take the piss out of, or Adam Sandler comedies, or any Kevin James movies and things like that. It'd be so easy to do that stuff. But I think that diving deeper into cinema, it's a much richer soil to dig in. Michael Nyman did Zoo, the piano soundtrack as well. I haven't seen the piano since it first came out. And I was shallow and callow when I first saw it, and I really didn't appreciate the kind of nuances of Jane Campion films. I'm really going to have to. There's a third film. I didn't know there was a third film. Great. So anytime, I'm going to have to wind it up soon. F.W. Murnau, I've got Faust to watch. It's one of the movies I haven't seen yet. I'm going to watch in January. So I'm going to watch Murnau's Faust, and I think I've got one other in the Creative Shame. But I'm going to wind it up soon. So any last minute questions before my throat gives out and I fall asleep in front of the camera? Happy New Year, breakfast at midnight. Yeah, 2022 is turning out so well so far. The first hour of it, at least, has gone gangbusters. Happy Queensland New Year, Dr. John. Hope you have a terrific 2022, mate. You deserve it. So let's see. Any last questions, people? I'll give you another 3 or 4 minutes, and we'll see what we come up with. In the meantime, thanks everybody for being part of this. Master of the World, great score. Les Baxter, I like. I've got a bunch of Les Baxter albums, and I like the fact that he did kind of cocktail albums as well as doing TV and movie work as well. And I've got a whole bunch of Les Baxter because there was a whole series of lounge music themed albums that came out a number of years ago, and I picked them all up on CD. No last minute questions or things people want to say. Happy New Year again, Thrash Bondo. Be seeing you, mate. And yes, I have been to Port Merion. Happy New Year, EMS3 recombination. Yeah, I've got some plans for the year. They should be fun. They should be enlivening, and I'm looking forward to kind of improving the quality of them as a little bit too. Simon K, let's see what do you got for me, mate? What's the pick in my brain? Mind you, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, so the brain may not be working. How did Sally and I meet? Online in chat room was the time. This is like 2001. We were in a little chat room, just chatting in general, and we got to know each other. Okay, you saw live accompaniment with Glass and his ensemble. That would be the way to see it, with a live orchestra. 9 a.m. Toby. Oh, half your luck. I could go some bacon and eggs, to be honest with you, this time of the night. But I'm not inclined to make it. Yeah, let's see. Bacon, eggs, a little bit of mushroom on the side, sauteed, yeah. Volcano movie you saw when you were a kid at the drive-in. Let's see, volcano movies. Devil at 4 o'clock with Frank Sinatra? No. Favorite actor of all time? Thelma Ritter. I did a whole video about Thelma Ritter. Scientists take a lift down freeing around the inside of a volcano. Crack in the World, that be it. It was 1960s, not 1970s. Let's see. I think I know the one you mean, Simon. Just give me a few moments. I'm going to do a little bit of Google Foo, and I'll find it for you. Let's see. Filmography. Won't be a sec, and I just got to get to the right era. When Time Ran Out, starring Paul Newman, Jacqueline Bisset, William Holden, Edward Albert, Red Buttons, Barbara Carrera. That would be the one you're talking about, I think. Could be wrong. The Man with James Earl Jones, The President's Plane is Missing, written by Rod Serling. Absolutely. Krakatoa, east of Java, which is actually west of Java. Yeah, so anyway, I'm going to wind it up there, people. Thank you very much for being part of New Year's Eve. Really appreciate it. I hope everybody stays safe. I hope everybody stays well and looks after yourselves. And I hope that 2022 gives us all much better circumstances than we've had. It's a tough time, but we're tough people. Every one of our ancestors survived long enough to breed. So, yeah, so I'll definitely do live streams again. But in the meantime, look after yourselves. Watch some good movies, watch some bad movies, and I will catch you all a little bit later. Thank you, Man with No Name. See you all later.